I once thought I married a god in 10 miles of red silk. Instead, he slaughtered my kin and left me for dead. Now, I am the palace's favorite dancer and the ghost in his bed. Each night, I smile while feeding him black poison, watching this almighty emperor wither at my knees. He is obsessed with me, never knowing that beneath this skin lies the soul he tried to bury. The rebels are here, Your Majesty. Are you satisfied with my final gift?
Isabella, why aren't you greeting the crown prince?
My father's stern voice rang in my ear. Following my father, I slowly raised my head, my eyes meeting the man's deep gaze. He, it seemed, was also sizing me up.
Greetings, Crown Prince, I said, stepping forward and bowing my head in a proper curtsy. Then, I heard him give a soft laugh.
Miss Lin, there's no need for such formalities. Please, rise. He gestured to help me up, his fingers brushing faintly against my arm. A thrill ran through me. I rose and stepped back to my original spot. While my father spoke with him, I stole a glance at him, studying him carefully. He was so handsome. He was around 20, his face as perfect as polished jade, with a beauty that could steal one's very soul. Oh no, I shouldn't use such words to describe the crown prince. I hurriedly lowered my head. Heh. As he turned to leave, I distinctly felt his gaze upon me. I heard his low chuckle, and when I looked up again, all that remained was the sight of his retreating back. I was stunned. In this world, perhaps no words could ever do justice to a man like the crown prince. His name was Alexander Leon, the current crown prince, the empress's only legitimate son. In both looks and talent, he was second to none. The emperor and empress were deeply in love, so there was never any question that Alexander would be named crown prince. The current emperor was growing old, and his sons had already grown into men. As a woman, I didn't understand much about court politics, but I wasn't entirely ignorant either. The secret struggles among the princes were constant. In the court, two main factions had emerged, one led by the crown prince, the other by the third prince. My father, the general of the cavalry, was a supporter of the crown prince's faction. The favor of the palace consorts was always closely tied to the politics of the court. The empress had passed away 2 years ago. Now, in the palace, it was the third prince's mother, noble consort Qi, who held the emperor's favor. Noble consort Qi was the daughter of the Grand Minister of Works. Her family was prominent, and the current situation posed a threat to the crown prince. He needed a crown princess from a powerful maternal family, and I happened to be just such a woman. The emperor held the crown prince in high esteem and was also very fond of me, so he immediately decreed our marriage. An auspicious date was chosen, and we were wed. I've long since forgotten the details of my wedding day. I only remember that the entire affair was magnificent, a 10-mile procession of red silk that stunned the countless citizens of the capital city. I finally entered the Eastern Palace. After a series of tedious ceremonies, I sat quietly on the bed, a red veil covering my head, waiting for the crown prince to arrive. I don't know how long I waited, but it felt like an eternity. Later, the chamber door was pushed open gently. I could feel someone slowly walking towards me. You may all leave us. Yes, the attendants replied respectfully. I heard their retreating footsteps, and then the chamber door clicked shut, leaving us alone. The crown prince stood right in front of me. Perhaps he was studying me. What did he look like today? Was he handsome? I wondered. Then, I realized what a silly question that was. When had the crown prince ever not been handsome? The man before me suddenly gave a light laugh. The next moment, the red veil over my head was lifted. My world was no longer just a sea of red. I saw the crown prince's smiling eyes and his handsome face. Greetings, crown prince, I stammered, fumbling to curtsy. He caught me and helped me up. Unlike the faint gesture from before, his hand held my arm firmly. Isabella, there's no need for formalities, he said gently. For a moment I was lost in a daze. He gently pulled me down to sit beside him, his voice soft as he spoke. I remember him saying, Isabella is the one my heart desires. From the moment I first met you, Isabella, I knew you were the only one I wanted as my crown princess. Isabella, you are so beautiful today. The crown prince was an extremely considerate and gentle person. After our wedding, we were inseparable, the envy of everyone around us. Everyone in the Eastern Palace said we were a match made in the heavens, our affection so deep it would make the gods themselves envious. That time was so wonderful. I almost believed it would last a lifetime. Gradually, the crown prince grew serious and somber. I heard whispers from court that the emperor was gravely ill, and the power struggle between the crown prince and the third prince had become increasingly intense. The emperor entrusted most of the government affairs to the crown prince, which showed the depth of his trust in him. The crown prince was managing countless affairs, yet he handled all military and political matters flawlessly. The whispers proved true. The third prince finally gave in to the temptation of power. With the support of noble consort Qi's family, the Grand Minister of Works, he launched a rebellion. The third prince's fief was in Yingzhou. Without warning, his army marched north, straight for the capital city. The third prince's army seemed unstoppable, sweeping aside the emperor's troops in one crushing defeat after another. Meanwhile, the imperial palace had been secured by noble consort Qi's people. For a time, it seemed the third prince held all the cards, forcing the crown prince onto the defensive. I didn't know what the crown prince was thinking, but I had always trusted him. The crown prince possessed a strategic genius for statecraft that was far beyond the ordinary. How could the third prince possibly best him? The third prince's men stormed the imperial city. By this time, the emperor had already passed away. There were rumors that before his death, the emperor had left an imperial edict naming the crown prince as his successor. The third prince's inner circle believed the edict must be hidden in either the sacred palace or the eastern palace. Impatient and at the height of his power, the third prince and his soldiers stormed the eastern palace with ease. The crown prince was not there, so it fell to me, the crown princess, to take charge. The third prince first sent a man to speak with me. "Crown princess, you must see the situation for what it is. The third prince is the one who should be on the dragon throne. You'd best tell us where the edict is to avoid unnecessary suffering." My hands were tied. I couldn't move. I gave a cold laugh. What edict? If the third prince is heaven's chosen for the throne, why would he need such a document? The man's expression froze. He then said to me, "How can you still not see the situation clearly? The crown prince is finished. I am the mistress of the Eastern Palace. Whether the crown prince lives or dies, I will not take a single step out of this place," I said, my face impassive. "As for what the third prince desires, I do not know, nor have I ever seen it." The man beside me wanted to persuade me further, but was stopped by a look from the third prince. The third prince advanced on me, step by step. He stopped in front of me, sneered, and grabbed my chin fiercely with his right hand. I felt a piercing pain, as if my bones were about to shatter. "What a fine eldest daughter of the Lin family," he said without expression, the pressure on my jaw increasing. Alexander Lian's mother, the empress who was once the most favored in the 6 palaces, her maternal family's men were all killed on the battlefield. When the news reached the palace, the empress fell into an illness from which she never recovered, wasting away from grief. The illness dragged on for several years, and in the end, she passed away. Without these turns of events, Miss Lin, do you think the crown prince would still have married you? Would you still be the mistress of the Eastern Palace, the crown princess of this dynasty? I had always understood my father's intentions. That was why, when the crown prince visited our estate, I was the only daughter brought forth to greet him. I am the only legitimate daughter of the general of the cavalry. Even though my father had several daughters, I was different from them. I was born to my father's official wife. From a young age, I was favored far more than my other sisters, and so the weight of my responsibilities was far greater than theirs. Only the status of a legitimate daughter could strengthen the crown prince's position. I had always been clear-eyed about these things. If the crown prince truly loved me, what did it matter if our marriage began with such considerations? Marriages are decided by one's parents and the words of a matchmaker. How could I possibly have a say? Besides, isn't your own princess from the Qi clan? What were your feelings toward her, third prince? My words provoked the third prince into a furious laugh. He drew the sword from his waist and pressed it to my neck. It felt as if the slightest pressure would send blood gushing out. "Are you afraid, crown princess?" I cursed him in my heart. "If you're going to kill me, do it quickly." What's the point of pressing a sword to someone's throat only to ask if they're afraid? I straightened my back and said nothing. I am asking you, are you afraid? The third prince applied a bit more force. I was sure my neck was bleeding, why else would it be stinging so sharply? The royal eye is a privilege of the crown prince. You are overstepping your bounds, third prince, I stated calmly. Good, truly good, the third prince sneered, nodding. My fifth brother really married a fierce one, so loyal to him. I knew he was furious, but I said nothing. I've heard the rumors that the crown prince and princess are deeply in love, a couple to rival the gods. So I'm very curious, what would the crown prince do if his beloved princess died here today? The third prince's tone grew vicious. I understood. He truly intended to kill me. I closed my eyes gently but kept my back ramrod straight. I wanted to die with dignity, so people would know I hadn't shamed my father, the Eastern Palace, or the crown prince. The cold bite of the blade against my skin sent a shiver through me, but the expected pain never came. A sharp whoosh of air struck the silver blade, knocking it off course. The next moment, I was pulled into an embrace. I opened my eyes and saw the familiar face of the crown prince. I still don't know what the crown prince had arranged with my father beforehand, or how he managed to arrive just in time. All I knew was that the tables had turned. The crown prince had sprung a trap, capturing both the third prince and noble consort Chi alive. Their power was broken. No matter how defiant the third prince and noble consort Chi were, there was nothing they could do. The late emperor had passed away, and the nation could not be without a ruler for a single day. With my father's support, the crown prince ascended the throne. He had all the makings of an enlightened ruler. He acted with swift and decisive force. The first thing he did after taking the throne was to execute the third prince and eradicate the entire Qi clan. Then he placed noble consort Qi under house arrest. I never went to see noble consort Qi, but I heard from the palace staff that the once insufferably arrogant consort had gone mad in her confinement. My father naturally became the emperor's most capable minister. And I, the crown princess, became the empress, mother to the world. After he became emperor, he didn't neglect me in the slightest. In fact, he treated me even better than before. One day he suggested we go to see his mother. Other than the customary visit to pay my respects to the Dowager Empress Grace the day after our wedding, I had never gone again, and this time it was his idea. The emperor stood before the Dowager Empress Grace's memorial tablet, held my hand, and said, "Isabella is not only a good empress, she is the woman I love. My one and only love." He said I was the one he loved. His one and only love. Not long after he ascended the throne, the court ministers, citing the emptiness of the harem, began urging him to select new consorts. But this time, Alexander Lian did not refuse. I had always understood. How could an emperor's harem contain only an empress? One day he would take many consorts. As the empress, I shouldn't be jealous. I tried to convince myself of this, but found I simply couldn't. That was the first time I ever gave him the cold shoulder. I refused to see him. Everyone else dismissed it as a playful spat between the emperor and empress, but only I felt a deep unease. I wasn't just throwing a tantrum, but my displays of displeasure didn't have the desired effect. Alexander Lian accepted all the daughters the ministers presented to the palace. He granted them ranks according to their family's status. At first, he would try to coax me, coming to the gates of Phoenix Palace every day and pleading to be let in. But as the number of beautiful women in his harem grew, he stopped coming altogether. The consorts came to pay their respects to me in the morning as always, their etiquette perfect and meticulous. I sat on my throne in Phoenix Palace, holding a cup of tea. I took a light sip. They had used too many tea leaves. The brew was bitter. A wave of irritation washed over me, and I set the teacup down hard. The sound interrupted the consorts, who were still exchanging pleasantries. They looked at each other, none daring to speak. Only then did I realize what I had done. I forced a smile and said, "I am feeling a bit unwell today. You may all be dismissed." After they left, I leaned back on my couch, lost in thought. In the end, it was my personal maid who broke my reverie. "My lady, Eunuch Wang from the emperor's retinue is here." I knew I couldn't keep this up, but my pride wouldn't let me back down. "I won't see him," I said stiffly. My lady, my maid took two steps forward, pleading earnestly. How long are you going to remain at odds with the emperor? It's clear you care for him, so why insist on this quarrel that makes you both so unhappy? I closed my eyes and took a deep breath to calm myself, then sighed helplessly. Let him come in. Seeing that I had relented, my maid was overjoyed. Yes, my lady. When Eunuch Wang entered, he looked deeply troubled. He bowed to me. Your Highness, the emperor's stomach ailment has flared up, and he refuses to take his medicine. Please, go and see him. My heart tightened. Alexander Lian had always suffered from stomach ailments. Each time it acted up, he was in terrible discomfort. But this man, who feared nothing, was terrified of drinking those bitter medicinal brews. It always took a great deal of effort to get him to take his medicine. Back in the Eastern Palace, he would absolutely refuse to drink it unless I was the one to feed it to him. How long has the emperor's stomach been bothering him? I asked. He's been in pain for the past 2 days. Eunuch Wang's entire face was scrunched in a worried frown. Insolence. I couldn't bear it any longer. How is the Imperial Hospital attending to him? How could they let the emperor suffer for so long? Your Highness? Eunuch Wang was on the verge of tears. The Imperial Hospital has plenty of physicians and no shortage of medicine, but the emperor must be willing to drink it. I lowered my head and bit my lip. Seeing my hesitation, Eunuch Wang pressed on. My lady, no one in this palace can compare to your place in the emperor's heart. Yesterday, Consort Jasmine went to visit him. She also tried to persuade him to take his medicine, but before she could even start, the emperor sent her away. I had no other choice but to come to you. The sedan chair is already waiting outside. My heart softened. I waved a hand. Fine, we're going to the sacred palace. I carried the freshly brewed medicine to the sacred palace. Alexander Lian had dismissed everyone serving inside. He was lying quietly on the bed. As I drew closer, I saw that his face was pale, his brow slightly furrowed in pain. Didn't I say no one was to come in? He sounded irritated, his eyes still closed, his voice weak. Your Majesty, I said, offering a bow. Hearing my voice, Alexander Lian's body went stiff, and then he opened his eyes. Isabella? He called, reaching out a hand to help me up. I sat on the edge of the bed, my head lowered. You are unwell. You should take your medicine. I picked up the medicine bowl. Please drink. Isabella? Alexander Lian's tone was deeply dejected. Have you missed me? I've missed you terribly. You're always so unwilling to see me. Even now, you won't look at me. A sourness welled up in my heart, but my words were still sharp. You are surrounded by beautiful women. Why would you miss me? I must not be clever enough to win your favor. Oh, Isabella. He pulled me into his arms with a hint of helplessness. Look at me. His voice was laced with bitterness. If I hadn't been born into the imperial family, I would have wanted only you, to live the life of an ordinary couple, have children of our own, one love, one lifetime. I lifted my head and looked at him. His eyes were filled with what looked like genuine helplessness. I should be more understanding. Isabella, you just need to know that you are the only one I love. All right? Alexander Lian coaxed softly. All right? Even though my heart was bitter, what else could I do? I must learn to be tolerant and magnanimous, I thought. I must learn to endure loneliness. You're the best, Isabella, Alexander Lian said with a smile. I brewed this medicine myself. Won't you drink it? I held the medicine bowl up to him. He frowned slightly and hugged me tighter, his tone almost a sulk. If you feed it to me, I'll drink it. After that, our Cold War ended. When my father and mother, far from the palace, heard about the incident, they sent a letter admonishing me that an empress should not be jealous, but should strive to be virtuous. Reluctantly, I had to agree. That day, when the consorts came to pay their respects, they had only exchanged a few words when Consort Lucia, sitting to one side, suddenly grew pale and nauseous. It startled me, and I quickly summoned an imperial physician to check on her. The diagnosis was not sickness, but pregnancy. Consort Lucia was already 3 months along. Alexander Lian rushed over in a flurry, clutching her as if she were a precious treasure, terrified she might so much as stumble. I could see he had never been so happy. He had never treated me with such delicate care. A mother's status rises with her son. The child wasn't even born yet, but Consort Lucia was immediately elevated to noble Consort Gloria. What's more, Alexander Lian visited her for several days in a row. For a time, her prominence was unmatched. Even I, the Empress, had to defer to her. That day, sitting in my palace, I did the math in my head. Noble consort Gloria had been in the palace for a year and was now 16. I had been with him since the Eastern Palace and was now 18, yet I still showed no signs of being with child. I gave a bitter smile. I admit, I envied noble consort Gloria. To be a noble consort at such a young age, and to be expecting her own child on top of that. Even if one day she lost his favor, she would still have her child. The long nights would not be so lonely. Then I was startled by my own thoughts. I was only 18. Why was I already wondering what would happen if I fell out of favor? I was only 18. Even among all the concubines in the palace, I was considered young, yet here I was, worrying needlessly, pondering what would happen if one day I lost his affection. At that thought, I let out a derisive snort. For some reason, Alexander Leon did not visit noble consort Gloria that night. Instead, he came to see me. His expression was gentle, tinged with a hint of apology. "Isabella," he said, "I've neglected you these past few days." I smiled and shook my head. Noble consort Gloria must be having a difficult time with her pregnancy. It's only right that you spend more time with her. We spent that night tangled in each other's arms. He was as gentle as ever. In a daze, I whispered to him, "I want a child of our own, too." His body went stiff. In an instant, all the tenderness between us vanished. He released me, then held me again, his tone unreadable and somewhat bewitching. "Why do you want a child, Isabella? You and I? We don't need a child to sustain the bond between us." I didn't understand what he meant at the time. So I waited. I waited for noble consort Gloria to give birth, and I waited for the devastating news that my entire family had been exiled. I didn't understand why. My father had always been loyal to him, yet he was branded a traitor. The emperor, in his fury, exiled the entire Lin family to the desolate frontiers, and I had no idea what he would do to me next. For several days, a heavy rain fell on the capital city. I knelt outside the sacred palace for 2 days and 2 nights. At first, I had the strength to plead my case, but eventually, the raindrops hit my body like heavy weights, beating me until I couldn't utter a single word. But that door remained shut. Eunuch Wang tried several times to persuade me to go back, but I acted as if I hadn't heard him. Who else could I turn to besides the supreme ruler inside the sacred palace? But I collapsed before receiving a single word of explanation or comfort from Alexander Leon. When I woke up, I was lying in bed in Phoenix Palace. My maids were gathered around me, their faces filled with worry. The imperial physician took my pulse. It was the young physician who usually attended me. "You have a deep chill in your bones. I will prescribe several courses of medicine, and you must take them on time. I will check on you daily. For now, you must avoid all exertion and rest. Otherwise, you risk permanent damage to your health," the physician instructed. My gaze swept across the crowd, but I didn't see the one person I most wanted to see. "Where is he?" My voice was faint and weak. The joy on my maids' faces vanished in an instant. My heart sank within it. Lily came forward and fed me a spoonful of hot ginger soup. Her voice was choked with sobs. "Don't overthink things, my lady. Your health is what's most important. How can you treat your own body this way?" I swallowed the soup, but I felt no warmth at all. Tears streamed down my cheeks, dripping into the bowl and creating tiny ripples. Lily hugged me, and my sobs grew louder. I couldn't drink anymore. "I want my father. I want my mother," I cried. I remained in a daze for several days, but he never came to Phoenix Palace. I didn't know if he was laughing with consort Jasmine, or playing with noble consort Gloria's newborn son, or strolling through the imperial garden with some other lady. But I knew he hadn't come to see me. Perhaps he didn't want to see me either. It was then I realized what it mattered that I was the empress. I was just another of this world's pitiable women. Without my family's power, without the emperor's love, I had nothing. I don't know how many days passed, perhaps 7, perhaps 8, but Alexander Leon finally deigned to see me. He wore a bright, cloud-patterned dragon robe, looking down on me from on high. I, on the other hand, was so pale I hardly looked human. I bowed to him weakly. "Your Majesty." Alexander Leon made no move. He simply looked down at me. After a long moment, he sat down to the side, but did not tell me to rise. "It's only been a few days, Empress. How have you become so thin?" His tone was colder than I had ever heard. For a moment, I felt completely lost. The memory of his past gentleness was still so vivid, yet now he was so cold. "Your Majesty," my heart ached. Ignoring the frost in his eyes, I couldn't help but cry out, "My father would never plot treason. I beg you, please see the truth." Alexander Leon sneered. "Is that really true?" he said softly. "I think he's grown quite bold." I froze, tears still on my face. I just stared at him blankly, trying to find a trace of his former love in his eyes. But I failed. I lowered my forehead to the cold floor. Alexander Leon stood and came to stand before me. His voice drifted down from above. "Isabella, your father's life has been going a little too well. He helped me ascend the throne. He was my right-hand man. His daughter is my empress. Heh, how wonderful, truly wonderful." He laughed coldly. The things my father was once most proud of had now been twisted into his crimes. I hated his power and influence, how his achievements overshadowed my throne. And I grew sick of pretending to be so tender with you every single day. Every word was a knife to my heart. He looked down at me, his eyes filled with a disgust I had never seen before. Only then did I realize how fake his past affections were compared to this genuine loathing. I couldn't even bear to think back on his every embrace, his every deep kiss. What had he truly been thinking all this time? He had woven a grand deception that fooled the entire world. The world knew of the deep love between the emperor and empress. My father and mother believed he treated me exceptionally well. Even I believed that I held a special place in his heart. But now, I finally understood. Who did he love? He loved no one. The only thing he loved was the power in his hands and guarding the Leon family's empire. But my father had served him so loyally, helping him guard this very land. In an instant, I also understood why he had said what he did that night. "You and I, we don't need a child to sustain the bond between us." Because there had never been any feelings to sustain. In fact, he had long been taking measures to ensure I would never become pregnant. I grabbed a corner of his robe and looked up at him, begging humbly, "Even if you despise me, my family has never done anything to betray you. I can give up my position as empress, but please, think of my parents' old age and spare their lives." With that, I began to kowtow, knocking my head again and again on the cold floor. My forehead split and bled, but it did not soften his heart. I have always believed that a job worth doing is a job worth doing thoroughly. Just think of what happened to my third brother and the Qi family. I finally remembered his brutal side. That was how he had treated the late third prince and the family of noble consort Qi, who had already lost her mind. That was the ruthlessness of an emperor. And now, that ruthlessness had finally turned on me. Whether you're my empress or not was never important. The only reason you are kneeling before me today, crying and begging, is because you are the eldest daughter of the Lin family. We could have been strangers. It is only because you are a Lin that things have come to this, that I have come to despise you. Since you are the empress, I won't depose you easily. It's just... Alexander Leon lifted his head and continued without a hint of hesitation. "The empress is unwell. She will recuperate in Phoenix Palace. She is not to wander the palace, lest she spread her illness to others." As soon as the words left his lips, he turned to leave without a shred of mercy. I remained kneeling, stunned. I snapped my head up to look at his retreating back and gave a wretched smile. "You are truly worthy of being a monarch, so willing to bend and scheme. But I must ask this one hopeless question. After all these years of acting, was there ever, truly, not a single shred of genuine feeling for me?" I already knew the answer. My face was a blank mask. Alexander Leon paused, turned back, and gave me a cold smile. "Of course not. Not a single shred." With that, he turned and without a backward glance, left Phoenix Palace. It was Lily who rushed into the hall, her eyes red, and helped me to the bed. Since the day I was born, I had never knelt for so long. My knees felt as if they were being bitten by 1,000 ants, the pain unbearable. But I paid no mind to my swollen knees. I sat on the bed, my lips struggling to form a smile. The days that followed were the most difficult of my life. My face deathly pale, I sat before the bronze mirror and put on my magnificent empress robes, listening with a blank expression as a young eunuch reported in a trembling voice, "Your Highness, the entire Lin family, young and old, has been executed." I was combing my hair when the eunuch made his report. Except for a few strands of dark hair that fell when my hand faltered, I showed no other reaction. I know. You may go. The hairpin I was about to place in my hair I now clenched tightly in my hand. I stood up, but before I could take 2 steps, my legs gave out from under me, and I collapsed onto the floor. When I came to again, all the servants of Phoenix Palace were crowded around me, their eyes red, not daring to speak. I think I knew then that my body was broken. To prevent me from conceiving, Alexander Leon had fed me potent drugs for years, leaving my health completely depleted. Stop crying. I tried my best to force a smile from my maids. Even if I must go, let me go in peace. I am only going to see my father and mother. My lady, Lily choked out, interrupting me. Don't say such things, you will get better. I smiled faintly and closed my eyes, saying nothing more. The sunlight that day was exceptionally bright. I dismissed all the servants. Leaning against the window, I gazed at the blooming chrysanthemums in the courtyard. Alexander Lyon had ordered them planted for me. I gave a mocking laugh. I turned my head and looked at the bowl of black medicinal brew beside me. After staring at it for a long while, I picked it up and drank it all in one go. If only I could live again, I would make Alexander Leon suffer a fate worse than death. In the 2nd year of Jingmyun, the Empress of Phoenix Palace fell gravely ill and passed away within a month. What was puzzling was that the Emperor and Empress had always been said to be deeply in love. Yet, after her death, Emperor Jingmyun concluded the funeral rites with little ceremony. Some said the Emperor blamed the Empress for the Lin family's affairs. Others claimed their deep love had been nothing more than a foolish dream. But the true reason for it all remained unknown. People bustled all around me. Ignoring them, I sat before the bronze mirror, picked up the lip rouge, and gently applied it to my lips. Rory, are you ready yet? I was just securing the last hairpin. I looked up at the girl and smiled slightly. I'm coming. The Emperor's birthday was always a lively affair. Days ago, the dance instructor had repeatedly warned us that any mistake before the Emperor would cost us our heads. I followed the other dancers slowly into the hall. Even with my eyes lowered, I could feel the imposing presence of the Emperor from his high seat. The music began. I danced in unison with the others, moving gracefully to the beat. My phoenix coiffure reached for the sky, my slender waist impossibly supple. With light steps, I rivaled the dancing swallows of the Han court. As the drums quickened their beat, my partridge-patterned sleeves fluttered like birds in spring. I was a willow in the wind, captivating enough to entrance any lover. A silk ribbon descended from above. I curved my lips into a slight smile, grasped the ribbon tightly with my right hand, and spun into the air. My wide sleeves trailed shimmering colors that reflected throughout the hall. Finally, I landed steadily back in my original spot, surrounded by the other dancers. Long live the Emperor, I said clearly, curtsying. The royals and nobles were silent at first, then a voice rang out from my right. Bravo, how spectacular. Following the voice, I peeked up. It was Prince Shen, the Emperor's own younger brother. That dance was divine. I have seen many dancers over the years, but I have never before seen one as ethereal as this. The crowd murmured in agreement. Prince Shen was a notorious rake. If even he praised a mere dancer so highly, the performance must have been truly exceptional. I kept my head down, silent. Prince Shen's praise was not what I wanted. I remained in my curtsy for some time, and my knees began to feel weak. Then, a cool voice came from the front. You, raise your head. I did as I was told and lifted my head, meeting the eyes of the man in the bright yellow dragon robe. His expression held a hint of interest. He waved a hand at me. Come forward. Yes, I answered. With my hands clasped before me, I walked slowly towards him, step by step. I reached his side and performed a deep bow. Your Majesty. He helped me up and looked me over for a long moment. What is your name? How old are you? I lowered my gaze and answered demurely. My name is Aurora Song, Your Majesty. I am 19. With my head bowed, I couldn't see his expression, but I could feel his silence for a moment before he spoke. Good. You have pleased me. You will stay in the palace as a noble lady. You are granted residence in Elegance Palace. I took a step back and bowed deeply. I thank you, Your Majesty. I was no longer a lowly dancer from Harmony Pavilion. In an instant, I had become Noble Lady Song, and I was moved into Elegance Palace. A group of servants knelt before me to pay their respects. I asked the head palace maid her name. She said it was Lily. The emperor truly seemed taken with me. He came to Elegance Palace on my very first day. For the next month, he visited Elegance Palace constantly. He would hold me, his eyes growing hazy. The scent of incense filled Elegance Palace all night, but it couldn't mask our intimacy. The emperor's visits continued into the second month. 3 days ago, he broke precedent and promoted me to the rank of consort. Rumors were already spreading throughout the palace, and many of the other consorts were displeased, but I paid them no mind. After our night of passion, we rested. I told him I was used to having a lamp lit in the bedchamber, and he agreed. The red candle flickered. I slowly moved Alexander Leon's arm from my body. He was completely unaware. I got out of bed, my body still a little sore. I frowned, walked to the dressing table, and adjusted the pendant around my neck in the bronze mirror. Then, I carefully opened the cosmetics box beside it. Beneath the jewels lay a letter. I tore open the envelope, my face impassive. Inside was a single sheet of paper with just one simple sentence. Meet me at the cool terrace tomorrow at noon. For the past 2 days, the emperor had been feeling dizzy and unwell when he woke. I helped him dress while offering gentle words of comfort. You must be exhausted from state affairs, I said softly. I turned, picked up the freshly brewed calming tea, and brought it to him. Drink some tea to soothe your throat. He took the tea without hesitation and drank it down. He gave my forehead a gentle kiss, then left for morning court, seemingly at ease. I watched him leave with a tender expression. Only when his figure had completely disappeared from the doorway did I finally release the breath I was holding. With no empress presiding over the harem, the consorts were spared the morning ritual of paying respects to the central palace. This left me with ample time. Lily served me diligently, but she was always distant. So I asked the emperor to give me Ruby, a dancer from Harmony Pavilion, to be my personal maid. We had always been close, which made things much easier. After Ruby helped me get ready, I had her make some pastries and send them to Radiance Palace. There were few princes in the palace, and only one without a mother. The first prince was the son of noble consort Gloria. He was 4 years old now. Unfortunately, when he was just 2, noble consort Gloria died suddenly. To secure my position in the harem, I knew I needed a son by my side. So, during this time, I made sure my kindness to the first prince was known not only to him, but also to the emperor. In doing so, I was able to successfully adopt the first prince as my own. Children are the purest. They grow close to whoever is good to them. To be honest, aside from wanting his support, I genuinely grew to love him. In the harem, a child's affection is far more reliable than an emperor's. However, I scoffed. That may be true, but I needed both the child for support and for Alexander Leon to be unable to leave me. I put down the wooden comb and ordered a servant to dispose of the incense ashes. I removed the pendant from my neck, then had a medicinal bath prepared for a long soak. Noon arrived quickly. I went to the cool terrace as the note instructed. To my surprise, the other person had arrived before me. He stood with his back to me, dressed all in black. I walked forward step by step. He heard my approach and turned around. As I expected, he was wearing a mask. Do you have it? My voice was steady as I looked directly into his eyes. The man smiled, then pulled an object from his robes. Use it sparingly. I can't wait, I sneered. I can't wait to see him wagging his tail and begging me like a dog. Aren't you looking forward to the day I wear the dragon robe? The man asked, taking a step closer, his tone playful. Of course I am. I tilted my head to meet his mocking gaze. We have a deal. When this is done, the throne is yours and he is mine to deal with. As night approached, incense was lit once more in Elegance Palace. I changed my clothes, took the pendant from the dressing table, and put it back around my neck. Then I sat before a table, my fingers brushing over the zither before I began to play. Would Alexander Leon come tonight? He would. He had to. I don't know how much time had passed when I heard steady footsteps approaching. They stopped a short distance away. He didn't speak, seeming to study me. I remained silent as well. He lowered his voice and called out, "Isabella?" At that, the zither music stopped abruptly. I looked up at the man before me. Whose face could it be but Alexander Leon's? "Your Majesty," I said with a smile. He seemed to snap out of a daze, as if his soul had returned to his body. He took a breath and let it out. A tender look appeared on his face as he took my hand and called softly, "Aurora. Your music is exquisite, Aurora. Might I be so fortunate as to hear another song?" I smiled and said, "My music is not for just anyone to hear." The Emperor wasn't angered. He bent down and swept me into his arms, though his movements were somewhat stiff. He laid me gently on the bed and sat on the edge, looking at me with great intensity. A hint of sadness suddenly appeared in his eyes. "Aurora, you are the only one I love without reservation." I said nothing. I lowered my eyelids and let out a soft laugh. Then, my pale arms wrapped around Alexander Leon's neck, pulling him down until our lips met in a deep kiss. His breathing immediately became ragged, his eyes hazy. I sneered inwardly and released my hold on him. "Do you dare? Would you give up the entire harem for me?" "For you, Aurora, I would," he said, holding me, his voice thick with desire. I pushed him away forcefully. Before he could react, I leaned close to his ear and whispered beguilingly, "You must listen to me. You have to listen to me. Do you understand?" Alexander Leon looked at me, his eyes hazier and more confused than ever before. I curled my lip. Seeing the Emperor, who was usually above all others, so helpless before me, so unable to leave me like a dog, filled me with a cruel sort of joy. I wanted to laugh out loud. So this was Alexander Leon. Or? He tried to say my name again, but I turned my back to him and said coldly, "I told you, if you love me, you must listen to me. Go to sleep now, or I'll be angry." I distinctly heard him take several deep breaths, but in the end, he forced himself to comply. "All right. Whatever Aurora tells me to do, I will do. Whatever Aurora forbids, I will not do." He must have been exhausted because he fell into a deep sleep a moment later. I turned over and looked at his features as he slept. I had to admit he was one of the most handsome men in the world. My fingers traced his eyebrows, his eyes, his nose, his lips, and finally stopped at his neck. I wanted to strangle him. No. I shook my head and gave a sarcastic smile. That would be too easy for him. Alexander Leon was sleeping so soundly that he was completely unaware of my movements. Soon he would be completely unable to leave me. He would be unable to handle state affairs. The journey from a wise ruler to a fatuous one is not a long one. I subconsciously touched the necklace at my throat. This was my trump card. I sent a message by carrier pigeon to someone outside the palace. "Success is near. Prepare at once." Everything was progressing just as I had planned. Lately, Alexander Leon's dizzy spells in the morning had become more frequent. After a moment of secret delight, I consoled him. "You're so busy with state affairs. Why not skip morning court?" At first, he would still refuse. So I ordered the servants to burn more incense in the hall and to saturate every inch of my clothing with its scent. Gradually, little by little, he sank deeper into his obsession. The spring nights were too short, the sun rose too high, and from then on, the Emperor no longer held morning court. Alexander Leon held me. I gently pushed his arms away and rolled on top of him. "How much of your heart is truly mine?" The clarity in Alexander Leon's eyes had long since vanished. He held me, forcing the last glimmer of light into his gaze. "In this entire palace, Aurora is the only one I love without reservation." I turned my head away, sneering where he couldn't see. Then I pressed my face to his chest and said playfully, "I can hear your heart speaking to me. The Empress's throne is vacant. Why not appoint a new one?" He stiffened and lowered his head to look at me. I dare say that was the clearest his eyes had been in days. He stared at me for a long time, then murmured, I can't appoint a new empress. The position of empress, I promised it to her long ago." He was getting agitated, his mind clouded. I gritted my teeth and soothed him with soft words until he fell into a deep sleep. I got up and ordered a basin of hot water. I sat before the bronze mirror and washed my hands again and again, as if to scrub away all the filth that clung to them. I nearly ground my teeth to dust. "Alexander Leon, oh Alexander Leon. Who are you putting on this act for, pretending you can't forget the former empress? Isabella Lynn is dead, so you leave the throne empty and refuse to appoint a new empress to show your deep mourning. Then why didn't you treat her well when she was alive? Why did you force her to her death? Perhaps I'll never understand. And I don't want to understand his cruel, imperial ways. I only know that he killed Isabella Lynn's family, and for that, he must pay with his life. A few days ago, the man sent word that everything was ready. They could attack the capital city and seize the throne at any time. Excellent, I thought. The emperor spent his nights in revelry, having long lost the will and the energy to manage the tedious affairs of state. I coaxed him, deceived him, and with a single imperial edict, Alexander Leon named me noble consort and gave me temporary control of the Phoenix Seal. Though I didn't have the title of empress, my position was effectively that of one. For my purposes, that was more than enough. As the favored consort, everyone in the palace saw which way the wind was blowing. They all bowed their heads and obeyed my every command. Alexander Leon's health continued to decline. I ordered the servants to look after him, forbidding him to leave the bedchamber at any time. Aurora. Don't go, don't go. Alexander Leon leaned against the headboard, his face pale. The dashing young man he once was had vanished. I smiled and sat beside him, taking the medicine bowl from a maid. I scooped up a spoonful of the dark, bitter broth and brought it to his lips. Alexander Leon obediently opened his mouth and drank, frowning slightly at the bitter taste. He was afraid of bitterness. I had always known that. You are unwell, and the first prince is still young. Since I am in charge of the Phoenix Seal, I must take responsibility. Fortunately, you have a good brother in Prince Shen, a loyal subject who reports the court's affairs to me daily. Otherwise, I truly wouldn't know what to do, I said gently. Alexander Leon took another mouthful of medicine and said, his voice full of pity, "This has been hard on you, Aurora." I looked down and smiled. The medicine bowl was now empty. I handed the bowl to a nearby servant, took out a handkerchief to gently wipe Alexander Leon's lips, and took his hand. Prince Shen has been waiting for a long time. You must prioritize matters of state. I will go discuss them with him first, and I will be back to keep you company shortly. Only after I coaxed him like this did Alexander Leon reluctantly let go of my hand. Inside the Hall of Diligent Governance, the day's memorials were stacked, waiting to be reviewed. I opened the first one. It was a critique of my ruling from behind the curtain. I sneered. A woman ruling from behind the curtain was bound to cause controversy. Most court ministers were against it at first, but since I had already made my decision, why would I back down because of criticism? Prince Shen supported me all the way, joining forces with me to eliminate dissenters at court. I thought that by making an example of a few, the rest would have learned their lesson. But from the looks of it, they still haven't. I passed the memorial to Prince Shen and said, "This one doesn't know what's good for him." Prince Shen glanced at it and smiled. "Why trouble yourself, my queen? If he won't listen, there's no use keeping him around. I will take care of it for you." I put down the memorial, picked up another, and smiled to myself. "You needn't worry, my queen," Prince Shen said with a laugh. "The world will soon be yours. What is there to fear?" I set down the memorial I was reading and looked up to meet Prince Shen's smiling eyes. "To hear you talk, Prince Shen, one might think you truly intend to support me as ruler. If that is what my queen desires, I will do everything in my power to make it so," Prince Shen said with a smile, not hesitating for a second. Prince Shen was not a man who craved imperial power. He was just like me, he only wanted revenge. Alexander Leon's mother, the Empress, was virtuous her entire life, yet she harmed only one person, Prince Shen's mother. The world said the former emperor and empress shared a profound love, a match made in heaven. But what the world perhaps didn't know was that the former empress had once lost favor because of Prince Shen's mother. Prince Shen's mother, the late emperor's consort Joy, was of humble birth but possessed a beauty that could topple nations. Although the empress was also a great beauty, her noble status had given her a calm and composed demeanor. Consort Joy was different. She was enchanting and seductive. The late emperor doted on her as if bewitched, even forgetting the wife who was once his soulmate. The empress gradually grew to hate Consort Joy. A frame-up and a bowl of poison sent Consort Joy to her death. As they say, the son pays for the mother's sins. Such was the logic, it seemed. Prince Shen's years of biding his time had finally paid off. He did not disappoint me. In the third month of my rule from behind the curtain, Prince Shen rebelled. By then, Alexander Leon had no power left to resist. He could only watch as his magnificent palace was reduced to ruins. He had not left my elegance palace for a long time. Every other part of the palace was in disrepair, but my elegance palace remained untouched. Alexander Lan was propped against the headboard, finding it difficult even to move. Dressed in my noble consort robes and carrying a bowl of medicine, I walked into the elegance palace, step by deliberate step. Hearing my footsteps, Alexander Leon looked up. "Emperor." I smiled and gave a small curtsy. "I trust you are well." Alexander Leon stared at me, his eyes burning. After a long moment, he raised his left hand and pointed his index finger at me. I chuckled, set the bowl aside, and turned to the bronze mirror. Slowly, I peeled the mask from my face, revealing my true features. "Emperor, do not get upset. Your body can no longer handle it." "Isabella, Lynn." He squeezed his eyes shut, the name a bitter, sorrowful whisper on his lips. "It is I." I turned and gave him a brilliant smile. "What's wrong, Emperor? Weren't you the one who told me the Empress's throne was empty for my sake? That you would name no other just for me? Such devotion. One can hardly tell which of your words were truth and which were lies." Alexander Leon closed his eyes as a single tear escaped, tracing a path from the corner. He was still a young man, yet he looked as withered as an old one. I picked up the medicine bowl, scooped up a spoonful, and blew on it gently before bringing it to his lips. "Don't be so sad, Emperor," I cooed. "Drink your medicine and get some sleep." Alexander Leon's eyes flew open. He clamped his jaw shut, refusing the medicine I offered. I was patient at first, intending to coax him gently. But then I suddenly changed my mind. I tossed the spoon back into the bowl with a clatter. The dark liquid splashed and rippled. Holding the bowl in my left hand, I drew a golden hairpin from my hair with my right. In one swift motion, I drove it deep into the palm of his hand. Blood gushed out instantly. Alexander Leon grunted in pain, his face growing even paler. Seeing the agony on his face brought me a sudden, immense satisfaction. "You don't still think you're the emperor on his throne, do you?" My voice rose. "Wake up. Everything you had is gone, vanished into thin air. The world has changed." I sneered and called out to the guards outside the hall. "Guards!" A few guards ran in. "Make the emperor drink this," I ordered. "Yes, my lady," the guards replied. I did not stay to watch them force the medicine down his throat, but I could imagine the spectacle. Alexander Leon, utterly humiliated. One step closer to death, a painful death. I stood outside the hall, gazing up at the deep blue sky. "Father, mother, did you see? I've avenged you." The dust of the rebellion finally settled. Prince Shen became the new emperor, and no one knew the whereabouts of the former one. He was chained up in the elegance palace, and every day I brought him a bowl of medicine. At first, he refused to drink it, which I found strange, considering how readily he'd taken it in the beginning. When he refused, I would use pain to make him obey, just as he once inflicted pain on me. Gradually, he became my puppet, allowing me to manipulate and toy with him. He was like a dying dog, wagging his tail and begging at my feet. But in the end, he did not survive to see the second spring. As he lay dying, I caught a flicker of hatred for me in his eyes. I couldn't bear it. Steeling myself, I stabbed him. He was dead. Utterly and completely dead. I ordered him to be buried in an unmarked grave, just as he had buried my parents. I laughed. I laughed with joy. I had finally gotten my revenge. The resentment I had carried in my heart for so many years was finally gone. But ever since then, I sometimes find myself thinking about that tiny spark of affection I first felt for him. It seems so insignificant now, but I do think of it from time to time. I really do. Whether I loved him, it all turned to hatred in the end, and whether I hated him, that too has faded into nothingness. And in this world, the Alexander Leon of the past is no more, just as the Isabella Lynn of the past is gone forever.